In just over a week, the House of Commons returns for the first time in 5 months. Mark Carney's Liberals are kicking off the new session with a strong minority, and the new Prime Minister says he's not seeking out any floor crossers. Have you explicitly had any conversations with anyone from any party about crossing over to help form a majority? The Conservative ranks, meanwhile, are bolstered with 23 new seats, but they'll enter the arena without leader Pierre Poilievre. How's it all going to play out? A special edition of the Scrum is here to talk about that. Najoud Al-Maliz is an economics reporter at the Globe and Mail. Graham Richardson is a managing director at Edelman Public Affairs, and Nick Nanos is chief data scientist and founder of Nanos Research. Hi, everybody.
Morning.
Nice to see you. So the first thing that we know that we found out this week about what next week and the week after looks like is that there's not going to be a budget, but there will be a substantive fall economic statement. The opposition is not happy with that, Najoud.
Yeah, it's interesting because Prime Minister Mark Carney was elected on the promise that he's going to do big things and big things quickly. And the first thing that we hear from the government is that there's going to be no spring budget. And so there's a little bit of a contradiction there between saying that we're going to get to business quickly, we're going to build housing, and yet you're not going to have any legislation to put any of those things through Parliament right now. And I think it indicates that there will be actually challenges for the Liberals to follow through on their big economic promises. It takes time to put a budget together. It takes time to build housing, to get a pipeline. Any of these big nation-building projects they're talking about, they're not going to happen overnight, and the evidence is we don't even have a budget going to happen in the next couple months.
Even if they do piece it apart, kind of as they will, let's say, through Ways and Means, as they say they will, Graham, with the middle-class tax cut, because of the numbers, they need at least two people from other parties to jump on board. The Prime Minister in our interview said not talking to anyone about crossing the floor, even though you only need two people to do so. Previous press conferences, he was asked, are you going to make a formal deal with the NDP, for example? He said unequivocally no. What does that tell you about the way he and his party, and the government, I should say, is looking at how this is going to work?
Well, early days, minority acting like a majority, almost a majority acting like a majority, and they've got open water for a while. No one's going to pull the plug after that election campaign. Nobody wants another campaign. Just run the thing. What I'm watching for, Vashi, two things when the House returns. What is the tone? Because overall, if there was a fault from the Conservative side against the Conservative side, that hyper-partisanship might have been part of it. I'm wondering about the country, whether there's general fatigue with that. I'm wondering whether deal-making and Parliament working is actually something people want to see. They're tired of the fighting. I'm not overly optimistic that that's going to happen, but I'd be interested in seeing that. The other thing I'm interested in seeing is, in 2015, that honeymoon never ended. Like, it went on and on and on. He was on the cover with Sophie of, like Vanity Fair, and then, so Carney is not going to have that kind of a window. What kind of a window is he going to have, and what's it going to look like? I think, to your point, I think it's going to be, it needs to be substantial. You need to be the new boss. You need to do big things, and I'm wondering what that's going to look like 6 months from now, what we're talking about.
You've got some great analysis, Nick, on that point, right? Because your new numbers show there hasn't been a honeymoon.
Yeah, actually, you know what? I don't think there's going to be a domestic honeymoon, but I will say I believe there'll be an international honeymoon, right? Stacked up against Donald Trump, Macron's, all those different kind of G7 leaders. He's going to look strong. It'll be like Canada's back. But the thing is, at home, here in Canada, there's still a significant proportion of Canadians want the Liberals out, are upset about the last federal election. They are not going to get cut any slack domestically. But I think Carney, he won't have a big honeymoon like Justin Trudeau, but internationally, it'll probably be better than anything back home.
That's an interesting point. On Graham's other point, Najoud, about kind of how partisan things are going to be. I mean, they're going to be partisan, but I do think there is an appetite, particularly on the things that Canadians demanded in this campaign from all parties, to see action on that. I think we're going to get our first tell, not just of how the Conservatives will be about that, but the Liberals too, with the Ways and Means on this tax cut. Are they going to attach other things to be able to say, force the Conservatives into voting against it, and to be able to say the Conservatives are against this tax cut? Or is it just going to be straight up and down, we promise to do this, and then the Conservatives have to show whether or not they will be kind of the old type or the new type?
I think if it's straight up and down, it'll be difficult for any party to vote against a tax cut. It's interesting because right now there's no NDP leader, there's no Conservative leader in the House of Commons, and so if anything, the fact that the budget is delayed until the fall allows those parties to get things in order in their own houses, and I could imagine the hyper-partisanship coming back in the fall. It gives a bit of a breather between the election. I think if they were all back and it was very partisan, it wouldn't look good. You know, we just had a federal election, Canadians voted, they chose a minority Liberal government, but by fall's time, if these problems continue to persist, as economic challenges persist in the country, housing's still expensive, Trump tariffs are an issue, we need to boost growth, then that gives more license for the opposition parties to be more on the attack mode, just as Carney tries to bring in a substantial fall economic statement, as they say.
Yeah, I think Najid's exactly right, that the runway is for sure over the next few months. There's not an appetite for everybody. They want stuff done, like you said, Graham.
Well, and
maybe not later. Yeah.
Not later. Not later. And the thing is, the biggest news story this week was not cabinet, was not even what Carney was doing. It's, oh, by the way, Honda's canceling a $15 billion investment in Ontario's auto sector. Delaying, okay.
Quote unquote. Yeah.
Quote unquote,
yeah.
Which of course came up during the campaign. They said, no, everything's fine. Everything's not fine.
Yeah.
Everything's not fine. And so when you're getting that kind of headwind early on, I think, agree with everybody's in agreement here, like substantial, tangible, real things that Canadians can hold on to in a time when they need that. And that's why I say I'm interested in where partisanship fits. And I'm somewhat optimistic given the by-election thing. He's not going to play games. He'll get it in there when he can. Yes, there's going to be a natural delay because of law, but he could go longer if he wanted to play games. And I think maybe he's sending a signal there that there's no time for this stuff anymore when so much is at stake. It's not hyperbole. It's not scaremongering to say that we're under significant threats because of what's happening in the United States. That is a harsh truth that will continue to hit us over and over again over the next, probably the next few years.
Yeah, I'm watching Graham for the pace of change, right? You know, like he was prime minister he still is prime minister, but there was that week where it was like before the election where it was high intensity. So the question is he going to continue that pace of change? I think he's probably a person in a hurry, and I think he should be. You know why? Because although the House of Commons is relatively stable because of the opposition parties are all wounded animals, period, full stop, every single one of them. Domestically, it's much more fragile. Like, let's face it, if he goes down to 38 and the Conservatives are at 41, then people are going to be wondering what's going on. And we all know from the polling, most of the time when you start governing, you start to become a little less popular than you were. Like, let's face it, he hasn't done a lot. He hasn't needed to do a lot. There's not a lot to really poke at right now. We have to see how his new cabinet performs. We have to see whether they start making mistakes. And you know, the thing is that I think the Liberals have to be very careful, and I think the Conservatives are very well positioned. That's what it'll take a couple things to happen, and you know, things could unravel for the you know, for the Liberals, and I think that's why the pace is going to be interesting to watch. I think they're going to go for a fast pace in order to keep the opposition on the defensive.
Okay, I'll leave it there, guys. Thanks so much, Nick Nanos, Graham Richardson, and Jude Al-Maliz.